is up, YouTube? It is Coach Kolton here to bring you physique development tools, skills, and opinions that hopefully you can apply for yourself to make some gains. Like this, baby. Guys, if you have not tried these Zevia pops, okay, they're great. Some of them are not, but some of them are excellent. I'll use that as my intro to this next video. Dieting for hypertrophy. We are back. In this video, we are going to touch on the macronutrient amounts for an individual looking to put on mass. Yes, that's right. One, we recapped in the last video, proteins, which are the structural components and the signaling mechanisms to hormones and peptides in our body that are going to release protein accretions that will put on more mass. Carbohydrates, they create a situation of glycogen homeostasis and supercompensation, aka swollen muscles, right? Jacked looking. Energy production and insulin. Insulin in itself is an activator of mTOR, the mammalian target of rapamycin, and it is effective at creating an environment where hyperaminoacidemia is effectively used. Fats, they are used primarily for hormonal regulation and health orientation, meaning that fats have an implementation in the results of improving cardiovascular function and some other things too, like lipid profiles, HDL profiles, cholesterol profiles. If you have not already, you need to watch episode 2. You need to go back and watch the prior video to understand everything I'm going to be touching in this video. It's very tempting to just go straight to the macros and understand it, but some things I'm about to say are going to be very controversial, in my opinion, personally. So when I approach this, I don't want you to think this guy is not coming from science, this guy is not understanding what he's talking about. Go back to the last video. Understand what I'm talking about and how I'm going to reference this thing. So, protein. Now, I already know that this is going to be a completely controversial topic compared to what most people have heard, a gram per pound of body weight. Sure, that is all good and fine and dandy, and that will probably get you to a point where you're not going catabolic and protein balance is overall net positive, but I do like to lean on the more higher protein side. Now, why? This is what I have seen effective in myself and my clients, and many of the kind of historical bodybuilders and the top coaches in the realm. They're all using high protein diets, like extremely high, higher than what I even have recommended here. Now, I think that there is a certain threshold to having too much protein, so my recommendations are sort of in the middle between high and low, or not low, just average. So take this with a grain of salt because it is my opinion and what I've applied successfully. You know, people like the Renaissance periodization group are going to say 1 gram per pound is just fine, sometimes higher. But there's a lot of evidence saying that if you can actually supercompensate, sometimes 3 grams per kilogram is effective at still increasing more muscle mass and causing more muscle protein synthesis. So in general, my current recommendation is 3 grams to 3.5 grams per kilogram. Now remember, of body weight, right? Now remember, in the last video I touched on, when I'm counting proteins, I am not counting the protein from oatmeal. I am not counting the protein from your peanut butter. I am not counting anything but whole proteins, full, complete series of amino acids from meats, nitrogen sources, whey proteins, you name it. The only way you're getting protein is not from plant sources, from whole food sources. If you're a vegetarian, that's awesome. You can use plant sources. There's nothing wrong with plant sources. Well, there's a lot wrong with plant sources just because the required dose to get these similar stimulus is almost triple to double of what you would need in just whole proteins. So I personally don't advocate the use of plant proteins. Sorry I said it. It's, like I said, controversial here, but this is known in the literature. Plant proteins are not as effective as, you know, meat proteins or animal proteins. So anyways, moving forward. This does not align with anyone who is in the current literature, right? What I want you to do is just examine this. And these, it's funny because evidence-based practitioners in this realm are going to say that they base their claims off evidence, and that people like me have no evidence off these sort of claims with protein intake, but those people are very biased and in fact blind to empirical evidence, which is the greatest significant factor in data, right? If you can view it and see these things happening in long-term data just by your empirical, by you analyzing the situation, it is very much more a line of evidence that's leverageable than something that's written on a paper, right? And so I beg of you to go to all the top coaches, Patrick Tour, just anybody, really, you name it, anybody who has athletes in the Olympia, and look at their protein intakes. They're significantly higher than this, but all of their dudes are ginormous. You might be saying like they're the exception and not the expectation, and you'd be right. But there is so much bodies that eat high proteins that are at the highest levels of bodybuilding that you can hardly say that there is no statistical significance within those group of people. If you say I'm just going to ignore that statistical significance of their high protein intake and their high body mass, you're wrong. Now, of course, I'm talking about people who are using super supplements, so this changes drastically when you're talking about naturals to super supplement users, right? But what I'm considering you, or asking you to consider, is look at the groups of people, look at how many of them are using high protein diet models, look at their body fat percentages, look at their success in their bodybuilding careers and their physique development, and tell me that's not statistically significant. Yes, you can view it on a paper and a case study, and this person uses this and their athletes do get results. Well, sure, anyone's gonna get results if you put them on a meal plan and some sort of structure. What I'm talking about is the next echelon of athletes. And so if you really want to compare, go look at Renaissance periodization's athletes. Go look at, Lane Norton's athletes. Go look at any evidence-based practitioner's athletes. Are they significantly are they coming into shows shredded, jacked? Are they that big in their off seasons? Are they getting sloppy in their off seasons? Look at the statistical significance of their population and tell me that a high protein diet is not effective. I'm sorry, a gram per pound of body weight is not enough in my considerations. If you want to build the most possible muscle tissue, you need 3 to 3.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. So taking myself, I'm currently about 100 kilograms, we'll go with 90, just because that was when I was leaner. So 90 times 0.3 or 3.0 grams of protein would be about 270 grams of protein, whole protein. So this is coming sheerly from meats, whole protein sources. You have 3 categories of food as discussed in the last video. This is only coming from the protein category. All right, that is that. I won't banter on about it any longer. I hope you understand my perspective on these things and can hopefully relate a little bit. If you can't, that's okay. Everyone has their opinions. This is what I've seen success with. Whatever you see success with, do it, because everyone is an individual and you're entitled to do whatever you want to do with your body. I'm just recommending things. Anything above 15 to 25% caloric intake of fat is good. So, generally, it's people see fat as a bad thing. It can be used in very useful ways, depending on when and how it's placed. But you don't want to get too little, especially if you're a natural athlete. Fats are very important for hormonal production. The steroidogenesis pathway, you need cholesterol to do that. To make your hormones, you need fat to line to neurologically function, right? Fats are extremely important in many different areas, as well as improving health markers. So you don't want to have no fats, but you don't need high fats. Absolutely not, okay? Fats are not something that needs to be drastically high. They are just a way to kind of serve the purpose of satiety. So they allow you to like your food more. Like a bowl of oatmeal with 2 tablespoons of some sort of nut butter in it is amazing. A bowl of oatmeal with a dash of cinnamon is okay. So, depending on where you're at with your calories, if you're really trying to push that next echelon of calorie intake, yes, fats are going to be essential, but otherwise just keep it at 15 to 25% caloric intake. Now, when you're dieting or cutting, this is going to drastically change. So what I'm referencing is putting on weight, putting on hypertrophy, putting on muscle mass, right? Dieting is the act of being catabolic. Thus, those markers are going to change slightly during that period of time. Carbs. Now, keep in mind, carbs are going to be for performance. They are the performance and energy producing molecule that we're leveraging to get more performance, to get stronger, to recover and reach homeostasis quicker after workouts. So whatever you have left in this calorie limit, so let's say you're eating 5,000 calories, you're going to have quite a bit left that you can shove into carbs, and you're always going to want to use the most you can. You need to become a carb monster in the off season, and you can look at this once again, extrapolate over all the data that we see individually. All the biggest bodybuilders And I'm not using this as like, they're better than you need to eat carbs, but look, and just all the top, even the highest running, the shortest, this is a ridiculous correlation, but any Olympic athlete from badminton to sprinting to pole vaulting to powerlifting is leveraging carbs for their performance. Every bodybuilder, powerlifter, strongman is leveraging carbs for their performance at the highest levels. It's cool people preach keto and low carb, high fat diets, and you can still perform well, but you don't see it. You just don't see it, and there's a reason for that, because our bodies prefer the use of glucose as energy as opposed to anything else. It's the most efficiently used modality of energy in our body, and so you need to do this. You need to eat carbs in the off season, in an environment to build muscle, to get more performance, to get more force production in your workouts. And you titrate for effect here. You titrate to pumps, you titrate to strength, you titrate to blood flow and overall energy, right? In the gym, how is your performance? If it's not going up, if you're stalling out, if your body fat is not drastically increasing, here's the key point: you don't want to get too fat. Increase the carbs. This is how you need to see food. Proteins are structural molecules, fats are hormonal, carbs are performance. Use carbs to leverage performance. If you're not performing in the gym, likely you can orient your carbs differently, maybe around your workout, in your workout, or somewhere in your day to leverage more performance. This is the study I'm kind of basing a lot of my opinions off of, okay? It's not a study, it's a review, and it's a very great review. I highly recommend that the majority of people need to read this if they're taking their own diet and training into their hands for hypertrophy. This is pretty much essential to read for anyone. Now you'll notice that number 3, higher protein intakes of 2.3 to 3.1 grams per kilogram may be needed to maximize the retention of lean body mass in resistance trained subjects during a hypocaloric period. So that's during a calorie deficit, hypocaloric calorie deficit. It doesn't talk much about hypercaloric, and what we know is that carbohydrates are sort of they leverage more protein balance to anabolism, but once again, if we can leverage more anabolism even at any point through the day, I'm going to apply more protein to it. Higher protein intakes of 0.3 grams or more per kilogram may have positive effects on body composition in resistance trained individuals and promote more fat loss. You see this in the off season of bodybuilders with high protein diets. They remain relatively lean, insulin sensitive. They remain very, very reasonable. Whereas people who have leveraged high, which I have in the past, leveraged very high carbohydrates. I've consumed at certain points in my off season in the past 1,200 grams of carbs a day, right? I literally get obese, not because of my caloric intake's any different. Right now it's about the same. I'm just eating higher protein and not as many carbohydrates, right? Now a couple more notes here. Like I had mentioned, fats are not generally used as energy in our bodies when we're talking about force production and ATP and creatine phosphagen system, all those things. Knowing that, people kind of see replacing fats, what would be called with an isoenergetic or equivalent amounts of energy in carbohydrates, as a favorable effect on protein balance, on performance, on overall feeling, right? And so it's very tempting to reduce fats to nothing, but you need fats in your diet. They are essential. There's essential fats, which means our body can't synthesize that fat. We need to receive it from the food we're intaking. Things like polyunsaturated, monounsaturated fats, things like omega-3s and omega-6s. These are crucial to our diet, to our health, everything, right? Not to mention that fats have polyphenols, they have flavonoids, they have things that are non-nutrient molecules that do provide us a large leverage of health and performance. So do not think that just because carbohydrates are seen as performance, the least amount of fats is going to achieve you the most amount of performance. That is not exactly true. Yes, carbohydrates are used for performance, but we need fats as well, at least at a minimum dose. Protein and carb timing is important, and that's something we're going to touch on later videos. This is going to develop kind of a lot over the next few videos. Carbohydrates should be altered for optimal performance. So as I was mentioning, if your performance is lacking, this is seriously super important to building muscle. If you've noticed that you're not gaining weight on your bench or your squats, or something is not going up progressively each and every single week, you need to look at all variables: sleep, diet, training, nutrition. 99% of the time, it's going to relate to sleep or nutrition, right? And carbohydrates can be used to leverage just like anything else, right? Progressive overload. If you're progressively overloading in the gym, you need to progressively overload with your food, you need to progressively overload with your drugs at times, and you need to progressively overload with all other modalities of your life, your sleep quality, your life quality, your stress, right? You need to, over time, develop things up to higher levels constantly, and then have times of where you bring that down and then bring it back up again. It's a large wave. So fat should be altered if you want food to be more tasty, as I was mentioning, but not anything else, right? You don't need more fats to get any extra benefit. As long as you're hitting what it is required minimally, you're going to be okay. You're going to be A-okay, as long as you're choosing the healthy fats, in which we covered in episode 2. So hopefully you watched episode 2 and you're not skipping ahead like I expect. In the next video, we're going to say when and why, as in food timing, and then meal size and number. So if you've made it this far, please click the button down below, subscribe, click the bell button, get notifications when the next episode comes out. And if you hate me, tell me in the comments. My red hair is so annoying. My outfit is also kind of annoying. I mean, who wears stripes and drinks Zevia pops? Oh my goodness, all day long? I do. I don't know. Guys, I'm just here talking about hypertrophy. What do I know? Anyways, deuces. We'll see you in the next video.